Greg, I am so happy that you're here for several reasons. And here you are, playing with Britney, playing bass. You're on tour with your brother, which is amazing, just having family members in the same band, traveling the world with such a top artist like this here. You're doing it. You're in the course of doing, this is a dream that there's thousands of other people, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Thousands of other people that want to be in your shoe. This is absolutely incredible. Where did it begin? How did music enter your life when you were young?
My earliest recollection is when I was young, really small. My grandfather had a big band. My dad played drums in his big band. He's a swing drummer.
What did your grandfather play?
He was like sort of like an everything guy. He sang, he played stand-up bass, double bass, and he played little drums, but he was more like an MC kind of,
years ago they had
band
a lot
leader.
of
Like the host of the evening kind of.
And did your dad play drums in that band?
Yes, he did.
Huge.
Yeah, so growing up, I used to hear this music constantly from him. And it's, All the Things You Are, Green Dolphin Street, all these classic standards that I didn't really know the names of the tunes, but I knew the melodies as soon as I heard them. So I had a huge influx of that music, which I loved.
Yeah.
And my dad sort of, I was born in 1970, so around that time it was like Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Bring it on, great band.
So that kind of combo of like jazz, rock. So I grew up with a lot of that stuff from my dad.
Yeah.
And my mother loved Motown, and she was a dancer too. So rhythm was definitely in the family. So my dad kind of started me and my brother on drums, kind of gave us sort of like a foundation of rhythm, which I thought was the best thing he could have done for me because...
Smart, very smart.
Yeah, it kind of like makes you aware of what's going on in the music, because that's where it starts. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the bass is drums.
So both you and your brother can play a little bit drums?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. How cool.
For sure. And then from what I was told, when I was about 3 years old, I was begging my parents for a bass. Because I used to watch my dad's band rehearse in our basement, and I really was like fixated on the bass player for some reason.
Yeah.
I think I loved the fact that he was in between the rhythm and the harmony.
How cool.
He kind of got to be on both sides. So they started me on that instrument, and then from there I sort of like branched out and learned kind of self-taught guitar. My brother was playing piano, so I kind of learned piano on my own.
Yeah.
But we used to like switch, him and I. So it's like, okay, I'll play drums now and you play piano, and I'll play bass and you play drums. And so we always used to like kind of go back and forth when we got bored of what we were playing. So it was such a rich growing up environment. Yeah.
Beautiful environment.
Having access to all this stuff, it was phenomenal.
So did you get involved with then taking lessons or being involved with the music school program? Was there?
Yeah, well, my parents started us on lessons when we were fairly young. I was about 10, I think, when I started taking formal bass lessons.
Yeah.
And then my parents encouraged me to join the school band. The problem was I couldn't read music, but I had a really good ear. So I could hear something once or twice and copy it. So I joined the band and they put me in the percussion section. And I think I played like ride cymbal or a tambourine or something in the beginning. I was just happy to be a part of it because I just loved the sound of that band. Even though it was an elementary school band, just the sound of the horns and the woodwinds and everything together was my favorite part of the day. So as I sort of like got peers that were musically, more talented than me, which I think is extremely important.
Yeah.
Always play with people who are better than you.
Beautiful.
Because you learn way more. I started to learn how to read and kind of got my way to sort of like get to their level so I could be, somewhat smart about it, I guess.
So you raised your game.
Always trying to raise my game, actually, even to this day, never settling.
So when did you start playing professionally with groups? Was it with your brother, or did you find other musicians? Or?
Well, we had like a high school band, all that stuff, and we used to play like talent shows and fundraisers for like, the sports teams or whatever. And then I was probably like around 17 or 18 where I started to play in like small clubs and stuff. Because I knew, I was always hanging out with older people, so they were always like 3-4 years older than me, so they would, say, hey, why don't you come down and play? And so, and I really did, to this day, I don't know how I did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know a lot of music, like per se, is a lot of different tunes like I know now, but I would just get up there and just go for it. and sort of started
What gave
doing
you
it.
the confidence and the courage to do that? Did you ever think about, was it just
I
passion or was it?
It was a combination of passion, and when I was really young, when my grandfather's band would play or my father's band would play, they would let me sit in all the time.
Okay, so you were comfortable somewhat.
Yeah, they would say, and I wanted to. I mean, I would just stand there near there's pictures of me just standing near my dad playing drums, like waiting for my turn, And I had like no nerves about it. I just wanted to play because it just made me feel good. Yeah. It didn't really matter that there were people watching. I was just like, oh, I just want to play, It was just exciting to be a part of a band, and I just love that vibe. Even to this day.
Beautiful. So it just made you feel good.
Yeah. Bottom line, it's like a drug that I can't get enough of.
So did you start taking lessons as far as, were there bass lessons? Did you go through books at all? How did you build
Yeah,
your
I think I
repertoire?
went through like some Mel Bay books or something in the beginning, and they were teaching me like basic stuff like scales. Once I started getting into my teens, then I wanted to learn like certain bands that I was into, Led Zeppelin or Rush or whatever. I wanted to learn how they played those bass lines, and the teacher would teach me the bass lines and I would just play to the record. Right. And then I started to kind of pick out my own lines from listening to the record. And of course teachers would then, turn me on to like Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke, Lee Sklar and all these guys. And so I started to sort of get like this, wow, there's so many different types of musicians out there playing different styles, and this guy uses this kind of bass and gets this kind of sound, and this is what's appropriate for this music. So it started to like give me like a huge palette of like what was out there.
Right.
Which at that time seemed like, wow, I mean, it goes on forever, but started to make me realize that it's not a one size fits all, So
you're researching bass players.
Yeah, for sure.
Researching different bands. How wide were the bands that you were listening to?
It was pretty wide. I mean, I was getting a lot of influence. I was in the high school jazz band, so a lot of big band stuff and all that came with that, like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, even Maynard Ferguson, even some more modern. And like some of the rock stuff that was around at the time, like Van Halen, this is like early 80s. Progressive rock music, because it was more interesting to me than just playing like eighth notes on the bass with an open A string, And then, you have friends and they say, oh, why don't you check this out? This is, punk. Or I remember like I got into the Violent Femmes for a while, which was like an acoustic punk band, which was awesome, I don't think I ever said, I don't like that. It was always something about it that made me interested and kind of piqued my curiosity, like, oh, well, what's going on there? Like, I really didn't judge it. I wasn't really judgmental about music, even early on. I just wanted to know, like, oh, what makes this person play this way? Or why is this a style?
Right.
Why do people like this type of music or that type of music? I mean, I was a big Billy Joel fan. My brother loved like AC/DC, even though he was a keyboard player, loved AC/DC, like bought every record. Yeah. So we used to listen to that. I mean, you name it. I mean, just about everything.
Well, that's very, very powerful. Would you ever have thought that all those early jazz recordings would have given you a foundation to play with Britney Spears?
Right. No, I never would have guessed that in a million years. Yeah.
And that's an important message for the younger generation to hear, the fact that
absolutely
you really have to widen your scope of who you listen to.
Yes.
You just don't know where something might plug into something that you're doing that would have come from a completely different genre.
It's true.
But it's very important, very, very powerful that you have that. So how did the whole professional gig, how did you hook up with Britney? How'd that come about?
Well, my brother has been with her for like 15 or 16 years, since the beginning.
He's a keyboard and MD.
Keyboard and MD.
Yeah.
And he started off more in like the technical audio side. He got a call to fill in for someone and sort of worked his way up the ranks. And, I mean, in the music industry, it's very incestuous as far as like if there's a guy who's like a band director or a band leader, he'll hire his guys from wherever. So there's an MD from New Jersey, he's going to hire all New Jersey guys,
Absolutely.
So every tour that came around, it was always some guy that was hired to put the band together. And my brother had always said, if I get my chance, if I ever get the nod, you're going to be my first call. And that's exactly what happened. And I would tell him, I'm like, it doesn't matter where it is or what I'm doing or where I am, just let me know and I'll do it. I came close a few times of subbing for someone who, thought that they couldn't make a gig or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like on standby a few times. And then finally when this residency kind of came through that it was going to happen, it was a rumor for a while, but then it came through that it was going to happen. He got the call because he had been with her for so long. He was the guy, that they always relied upon. And he says, oh yeah, I got a band. And we had actually put together a rock band like a few years before this residency. And we were just playing around like Boston, North Shore or whatever. And he called all the guys in the band and he says, hey, do you guys want to do the Britney gig? And he called me first. I'm like, you don't even have to ask me. Like, when do I fly? What's the deal? Like, who do I talk to? So then he hooked me up like the next day. I mean, it still like blows my mind that.
Pretty amazing, right? That
it happened out of the blue. Yeah. I wasn't prepared for it. Like, it didn't seem like it was going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have a build up to it. It was just.
Well, listen, your brother would not have recommended you had he not felt you were prepared for it.
Absolutely.
So, I'm sure he knew what you could do.
Yeah.
Before Britney, were there local bands around Boston that you were playing with?
Yeah, in fact, the last gig I had before I came out here, I was playing with it was like a local corporate wedding, everything type of band, GB, they call it in the East. I think they call it something different out in the West.
Casuals or club dates.
Yeah, club dates.
Yeah.
The singer of that band was a guy by the name of Ray Green, who is now singing with Carlos Santana. But he had, at that time, had gotten the call for Tower of Power. They needed a singer. Yeah. And we both got, like within 2 weeks of each other, these amazing opportunities. And we were playing that last wedding. It was a wedding at the Four Seasons in Boston. And we were just smiling the whole time at each other. And I remember we had our dinner break and I'm like, I can't believe like next week, my life is going to change. I had no idea what was going to happen, like what I was going into. And he was like, yeah, me too. I mean, he was going to be on the road. They were doing like 200 dates a year with Tower of Power. And it's just like we went, we keep in touch every once in a while, but it's just bizarre that, there was so many great musicians that I played with, and you just don't know when your number is going to be called.
Absolutely.
That's how it is. It's just
so
like
let's talk about the dream, because that's really what you're experiencing right now. We speak about the American dream. Mm-hmm. Well, I believe there's a world dream. In every country, they have their own dreams, and if you work hard enough, you can achieve that. Mm-hmm. So you put time into your instrument. You practiced. You put the hours in. You put the preparation in. When you got the call, and you hit that first gig, what was that like when you hit it?
I got so focused. I have like a method that I try to go through. Like I try to focus on the music. Mm-hmm. Everything else, whatever, I'll just deal with it when it happens. Yeah. So it was really left up to us to formulate how we were going to approach this.
Right.
So I couldn't rely on the original recordings because it was none of the original bass lines.
Right.
They were all kind of like, well, here's the basic idea and just run with it. So I just sat with it for like 2 weeks and just went over every song and just tried different things and said, okay, maybe I can do this. Then I started thinking, what kind of basses should I use? What kind of sound should I have? Right. Ever since too, we've been sort of morphing it over the last 4 years into trying different things and kind of like expanding upon what we started. So it's nothing like it started.
Right.
It really kind of like just exploded into something else. And we try to make it different, actually, for us, but it translates to the fans because we have a lot of people who come to several shows and they're like, oh, wow, this was a different kind of vibe and you did something different. Sometimes if there's a space, someone might take liberties and take a solo or something just to change it up, and it works. We kind of have a good knack for it now, so. Interesting.
Are there things, now that you're at this position, are there things that you look back and say, what could I have done differently that could have further prepared me? Is there anything that you look back and say, or can you say, I was prepared?
Musically speaking, I was prepared.
Great.
As far as the business side, I guess, with a gig like this, you tend to feel like, oh, I'm going to be in the spotlight. That's the first thing that comes to your mind is that, well, I'm going to be like, we could be people taking pictures of me, which it's not like that at all. People don't care, which is fine actually, because I never got into music to be noticed or be in the spotlight. That never interested me. Yeah. I don't mind being on a stage; it doesn't bother me. Yeah. But I'm not seeking attention. I just want to be part of the action and part of the overall whatever's going on that's being entertained, people being entertained by. So
Yeah.
at first I was a little like, oh, how, am I like wearing the right clothes, or, how do I interact? But it was kind of a waste of mental energy, I think, thinking about all that stuff.
But that's a great point, because there's a lot of concerns that people have that I see on my travels where they waste time worrying about something where the challenge is not even there yet.
Right.
And as opposed to taking that energy and focusing on what you have control over and what you need to prepare for.
Exactly.
So that's fantastic that you went through that. The business side, have you grown up now with a business side of, is there a certain level of professionalism that you now have that's a whole different level, showing up on time? And
yeah, I'm a stickler for being punctual. You have to be on time.
yeah, everyone says if you show up on time, that's
you're late.
Yeah,
yeah, you're
you
late.
got to really be there.
Yeah,
ahead of time.
I like to be there way ahead of time. I mean, maybe it's a little too much, but like an hour or an hour and a half before I have to be there.
Yeah.
Because you just never know. But I just like being in the know, because I hate being surprised last minute. It kind of...
What a great bit of advice, because I mean, that's something which, basically what you're doing is you're setting yourself to expect the unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this industry, it's like that all the time.
Yeah.
It changes like the wind, so.
And playing Vegas, are there different, rooms or cities that are different for you that when you're playing, or ones that you prefer more of? Are there?
No, I mean, I've toured through like Eastern Europe. I've played around the U.S. I mean, 20 years ago, I was out here with my brother. We were playing in a lounge band, actually.
Nice.
And we played all up and down the strip in the lounges, not the main room.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an interesting experience, because we didn't really know what the deal was as far as, like, now you'll see a band and like there's a rock band or a country band. We were billed as a variety band, so we had to do everything. But
Right.
we were like doing like original songs, which I don't even know how we got away with that. But we were just like, yeah, we'll throw in an original here. And people sort of like didn't mind. But I think somehow that ignorance worked. And I didn't know it was going to work, I would never do that now, because you learn, and people tell you, everyone tries to give you their advice and say, you can't do that. I mean, that kind of proved that you can do anything if you do it well enough. That was it's something my brother and I always laugh about. I'm like, man, what were we thinking? Like, we came here, we were playing original music. People had no idea, they're like, oh, it's good, whatever.
How exciting. But how exciting that you took the chance and came out here. And how wonderful that you were able to experience that with your brother. To come out and be a part of the whole family scene when you're coming out to Vegas. I mean, I was out in Vegas here performing in 1976.
Wow.
It was a very, very different place at that time.
Back in the day.
And I was playing the lounges out here, and when you came down and walked down the strip, you saw, Sinatra at the Sands, and you saw Dean Martin.
And Planet Hollywood was the Aladdin.
Absolutely, and Sammy Davis Jr. And you were just like, whoa, this is the place. And so the fact that you've reached this level is absolutely fantastic. In closing, I want you to think about a closing comment to this next generation of young kids that are looking at this, saying, I want to do that someday. Mm-hmm. And you'll continue doing this for as long as you want, because you're young enough and you're sharp enough at what you're doing. But for this next generation, what would you say to them to give them direction or hope and guidance for them to seek out their musical career?
I think the thing that has always stuck with me, which one of my biggest mentors, who was actually a piano player and teacher, who my brother was studying with, and I was driving my brother to the lessons, and he came up one day, he's like, you're next. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm next? He's like, you're gonna be my student. And I was like, but I'm a bass player. He's like, it doesn't matter. And he kind of gave me a whole new way of approaching music by thinking as a piano player or a horn player, to apply that to what I was doing, which really opened up my whole improvisational way of doing things and my mind. But he always used to preach the 4 Ps, he said, and it was practice, patience, perseverance, and persistence. And he always says you have to constantly go over those things. Don't get frustrated, stay with it, keep practicing, just keep putting your time in and keep having faith in that, and eventually it'll work. And he was right, it worked.
Pretty amazing that you can have that level of guidance from a mentor that obviously saw something inside of you, that moved him to say, I'm going to invest in you. And here you are years later, still seeking out that advice. That's the power of education, the power of knowledge, that you can have this information to kind of be with you for the rest of your life. Here you are on stage now with Britney in Vegas at the peak of your playing ability and what you're doing. This is the life. This is why we seek music.
It is.
And you're doing this to inspire everyone that comes in that audience. I've talked to some people that have seen the show. They are just blown away by it. So with that, you're reaching people and you're doing something much, much bigger than you probably could have ever imagined in your life.
It's true. It's true.
Greg, this is fantastic. On
Thank
behalf
you.
of the sessions, we thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Good luck. Thank you.
Too.